Thank you. Now I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Fleischmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, thank you so much for appearing before us today. I have two questions. The first is on the RAN, the Radio Access Network. The CHIPS and Science Act contained funding for grants that could help increase supplier diversity in the wireless industry by supporting open radio access networks, the RAN. Can you give us your thoughts on the program, on how these funds can help scale new commercial-ready Open RAN vendors? And what is at stake if these funds aren't quickly deployed to help spur the development and deployment of Open RAN wireless networks?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, as you say, there's $1.5 billion in the CHIPS Act for ORAN. I would say I think it's vitally, critically important because we need secure 5G and 6G networks, and to protect ourselves. And one way to do that, to bring down the cost, is to have them be open. So we put out the first money in August of this year. We put out $5.5 million for the first awards. We're going to put more money out later this fall. We're very engaged with industry. I've actually been meeting myself with the wireless carriers. That's the key, I think, to get the carriers to be open to, embracing this instead of just working with incumbent hardware providers. So I think it's a critical innovation for our national security, and I'm actually grateful that Congress put that money in the bill.
And I thank you, and we'll work with you to continue to expedite that. So I thank you so much for your answer. My next question deals with semiconductor manufacturing tax credits. Without going into too much detail on Section 48D, just wanted to let you know what we were talking about. Earlier this year, Commerce issued proposed guidance for the CHIPS Act's grant programs that defined semiconductor as semiconductor devices only, and defined semiconductive substances such as polysilicon as material. The Department of Treasury unfortunately relied on this narrow definition in their proposed regulations for implementing the Act's tax credits, excluding investments in U.S. polysilicon manufacturing and other facilities in the supply chain from qualifying for the credit. I feel that without domestic polysilicon ingot wafer manufacturing, we won't be able to build out our domestic semiconductor manufacturing supply chain. So my question, Madam Secretary, is will you commit to working with the Department of Treasury to issue final regulations that correctly define semiconductor to include semiconductive substances such as polysilicon and wafers, which represent critical parts of the semiconductor manufacturing supply chain?
So let me say, as you correctly say, this is in Treasury's wheelhouse. So, but yes, I will work with you and Secretary Yellen to look at this issue, recognizing that my authority relates more to the grant program, and Secretary Yellen is in charge of the 25% ITC. But I hear you. We can follow up, and we can talk to the Secretary's team.
Thank you, because with that narrow definition, it does exclude a lot of things that are critically important, in my view, to creating that domestic supply chain. And I think what Treasury did is they respectfully, incorrectly latched on to a very narrow definition, which we'd like to see expanded and broadened. And I thank you, and with that, I yield back.